I've been a trucker for over 20 years, and I've seen my share of strange things on the road. But nothing compares to what happened to me one rainy night on a desolate highway in New Mexico. I was hauling a load of electronics from Los Angeles to Houston. It was late, and the weather was awful, heavy rain, lightning, and visibility barely a few feet in front of me. The road was slick with rainwater, and every now and then, a flash of lightning would illuminate the empty, endless stretch of highway. I had a deadline to meet, and despite the treacherous conditions, I decided to push through, hoping the storm would let up. Around midnight, I saw a figure on the side of the road. The figure was barely visible through the sheets of rain, a dark shape standing in the downpour. As I got closer, I realized it was a young woman, drenched to the bone, waving me down. She looked desperate, her clothes clinging to her skin, her hair plastered to her face. Against my better judgment, I decided to pull over. I couldn't leave her out there in that weather. She climbed into the passenger seat, shivering and thanking me profusely. She said her name was Emily and that her car had broken down a few miles back. She was pale, her lips blue from the cold, and her hands trembled as she pulled her wet hair away from her face. We drove in silence for a while, the only sound being the rhythmic beating of the wipers against the windshield and the roar of the rain on the roof of the cab. Emily seemed nervous, constantly glancing behind her as if she were afraid someone was following us. I asked if she needed to contact anyone, but she just shook her head and asked if I could drop her off at the next town. The miles passed slowly. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the road remained deserted. The atmosphere in the cab was tense, Emily's anxiety seeping into me. I tried to make small talk to ease the tension, but she gave only brief, monosyllabic answers, her mind clearly elsewhere. As we approached a small, run-down gas station, she suddenly screamed, "Stop! This is where I need to get out." The urgency in her voice startled me, and I pulled over immediately. She jumped out of the truck and ran towards the gas station, not even bothering to close the door behind her. I called after her, but she didn't turn back. Confused and slightly unnerved, I decided to go inside the gas station and see if she was okay. The place was old and decrepit, with flickering neon lights and a sign that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. The smell of gasoline and stale coffee hung in the air as I walked inside. The old man behind the counter looked at me strangely when I asked about the girl. He was a wiry figure with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. He told me no one had come in. I described her in detail, but he just shook his head. As I turned to leave, he called out, "Wait. You said she was wearing a red dress?" I nodded, and his face turned pale. "You're not the first trucker to see her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emily died in a car accident on this highway 10 years ago. Her spirit haunts these roads, trying to find her way home." A chill ran down my spine. I didn't sleep much that night. I couldn't shake the image of Emily's terrified face, her frantic glances behind her, as if something was chasing her. The old man's words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had encountered something beyond explanation. I finished my haul to Houston, but I never drove that route again. The memory of that night lingered with me, a haunting reminder of the strange and unexplainable things that sometimes happen on the road. Even now, years later, I can still see Emily's face, her eyes wide with fear, staring back at me through the rain. It was a warm summer night, and I was on my way to deliver a shipment of furniture to a warehouse in Chicago. I had been driving for hours, and the monotonous hum of the engine and the rhythmic passing of the white lines on the road had started to wear on me. I needed a break, so I pulled into a rest stop off the interstate in Illinois. It was one of those old, isolated rest areas with dim lighting and overgrown vegetation, a relic from a bygone era. I parked my rig and got out to stretch my legs. The place was eerily quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl breaking the silence. The air was warm and humid, the kind of night where the heat clings to your skin. I decided to use the restroom before getting back on the road. As I approached the building, I noticed something strange. All the lights inside were flickering. The building itself was old, with cracked tiles and peeling paint, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. It felt like walking into a horror movie set. I entered the restroom and immediately felt a chill run down my spine. The air was unnaturally cold, and the flickering lights created an unsettling atmosphere. I hurried to do my business and wash my hands. As I was about to leave, I heard a whisper. It was so faint I thought I imagined it. But then I heard it again, clearer this time, "Help me." I turned around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. The whispers continued, growing more urgent. "Help me. Please." The voice was desperate, pleading. I bolted out of the restroom and ran back to my truck. My heart was racing, my mind struggling to comprehend what I had just experienced. As I started the engine, I saw something in my side mirror, a figure standing by the restroom door, watching me. It was a shadowy shape, barely discernible in the dim light. I didn't stick around to investigate. I floored the gas pedal and sped out of there, the tires kicking up gravel as I tore down the highway. When I reached Chicago, I told a fellow trucker about my experience. He looked at me with wide eyes and said, "You were at the old Willow Creek rest stop, weren't you? That place is haunted. Years ago, a young woman was murdered there. They say her spirit still lingers, looking for someone to help her." The story sent chills down my spine. I avoid that rest stop now, and every time I drive past it, I get a shiver down my spine, remembering the desperate whispers and the cold, empty restroom. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unresolved, a restless spirit trapped in that lonely place. Over time, I heard more stories from other truckers. Some claimed to have seen the figure standing by the restroom door, others heard the whispers. A few even said they saw the ghostly figure walking along the highway, disappearing into the night. Each story added to the legend of the haunted rest stop, and each one reinforced my decision to never stop there again. Driving through Illinois, I always keep my eyes on the road, refusing to glance in the direction of the old Willow Creek rest stop. The memory of that night remains vivid in my mind, a reminder that some places hold on to their ghosts, and some stories are best left untold. This happened to me a few years back when I was driving through the Appalachian Mountains. I had a long haul from Virginia to Kentucky, navigating through winding mountain roads and dense forests. The route was challenging, with steep inclines, sharp turns, and stretches of road that seemed to disappear into the mist. It was the kind of drive that required full concentration, especially at night. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. Another truck was following me closely. At first, I assumed it was another driver trying to make up time, just like me. But as the miles passed, the truck stayed right on my tail, never attempting to pass. The headlights were a constant presence in my mirror, an unblinking eye watching my every move. After a while, I noticed something odd about the truck. It was old, much older than any truck I'd seen on the road. It looked like a model from the 1950s, with a classic design and an aura of nostalgia. The truck was in pristine condition, its paint shiny and its chrome glistening even in the dim light. It struck me as strange, but I shrugged it off and kept driving. Then, another truck appeared beside me, also an old model, matching my speed. The two trucks flanked me, their presence unsettling. Both were eerily silent, their engines producing no sound. My CB radio crackled to life, but instead of hearing the usual chatter, I heard static and faint voices, like a distant conversation from another time. The voices were muffled, indistinct, but there was something haunting about them. I tried to communicate with the other drivers, but there was no response. The radio continued to emit static and faint, ghostly voices. Panic started to set in as I realized I was not alone on this road but was part of a ghostly convoy. The old trucks stayed with me for miles, their drivers invisible behind dark windows. The road seemed to stretch endlessly, the mountains looming on either side like silent sentinels. Finally, we approached a tunnel. The entrance was a dark, gaping maw, and as I entered, the lights on the old trucks flickered and then vanished. The tunnel was long, the darkness oppressive. I kept my eyes on the road, my heart pounding in my chest. When I emerged on the other side, the old trucks were gone. There was no sign of them, just the empty road ahead and the cold night air. Shaken, I continued my journey to Kentucky, arriving at my destination without further incident. I shared my experience with the staff at the truck stop, and they told me about the legend of the ghost convoy, trucks from the past that appear on the mountain roads, forever traveling a route they took in life. The legend spoke of drivers who had died on those roads, their spirits trapped in a perpetual journey, seeking solace that would never come. To this day, I can't explain what I saw. But every time I drive through the Appalachians, I can't help but glance in my mirrors, half expecting to see those old, silent trucks following me once again. The memory of that night lingers, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows of the mountains. Over the years, I've heard more stories from other truckers about the ghost convoy. Some claim to have seen the trucks on misty nights, their headlights cutting through the fog, their engines silent. Others spoke of hearing the ghostly voices on their radios, a chilling reminder of the lost souls forever traveling the mountain roads. Each story added to the legend, a tapestry of fear and fascination that kept the memory alive. Driving through the Appalachians, I remain vigilant, my eyes scanning the road and my mirrors. The mountains hold their secrets, and I know that somewhere out there, the ghost convoy continues its eternal journey, a spectral reminder of the past and the mysteries that still haunt the highways.